Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us tonight, the Telegraph's Jason Burt and Craig Hope from the Daily Mail. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Great to have you with us. Let's quickly run through Back Pages to set the scene. Switch hitters is the headline in the Express. The swap deal for Sterling and Sancho. Tonali bids to repay Newcastle. And in cricket news, Johnny Bairstow took snub badly. Telegraph front page of the sports supplement. United and Sterling talks. Borthwick backed after senior players hold talks. That, of course, a rugby union story. And Bolter's bottle. Katie wins through at Flushing Meadows. Metro back page causing a big stir spelled S-T-E-R. Arteta has a strong feeling about Mikel Merino, and Katie KO's Ali. Times back page, United agreed £50 million deal for Ugari. Loss of Jones, a big shock. That's the rugby union story, the defence coach. And cash boost for top four clubs due to Champions League participation. And in the Eye, United agree a £42 million deal for the heir to Keane. The three for Toffees, Brazilian to Bees as Chelsea make move for Tony. Right, let's talk Sterling Sancho to kick it off. Then, Jason, I'll come to you with the back page of the Express. Switch hitters, a swap deal on cards for Sterling and Sancho. How remarkable, Jason, would this be in the final days of the window?
Yeah, it'd be truly remarkable. It would be the transfer deal of the summer, and possibly several summers in many ways, because of the way it's developed. It's dominated our main lead story for 3 days now. On Monday, we reported that the swap deal was possible. Yesterday, or today, sorry, the story was that Sterling was actually quite keen on the move. And this morning, my colleague Mike McGrath found out that the talks had opened between Manchester United and Chelsea, that Dan Ashworth, the sporting director, had been in contact with Chelsea to discuss the deal. I think it's largely being driven, obviously, by expediency. Chelsea wants Sterling out as quickly as possible. He wants to leave now. Obviously, knows he's got no future at Chelsea. And at the same time, Manchester United want rid of Jadon Sancho. What the big stumbling block is going to be, obviously, it's a very complicated deal. For it to be a direct swap deal is extremely difficult to land. It may be that they try and do these two deals separately. Both clubs, though, are making it very, very clear there's quite a long way to go, even though we've only got a couple more days of the transfer window left. They're making it very plain that they don't want to pay the wages that either of these two players are earning. They're basically on comparable wages of £300,000 a week, in excess of that. Huge deals. Chelsea are very clear now they want all their signings to fit within their much more leaner wage structure. Manchester United would not want to pay that amount of money for Sterling either. So there's an awful lot of way to go yet. But obviously the clock is ticking. However, in saying all of that, it is moving on at pace. And the story on Sunday evening was that there was a possibility of it happening. Now those talks have opened, and it looks like they're going to be in further negotiations tomorrow. We'll bring in Craig in just a second, but Jason, as it's your story, I want to mention the article in the Telegraph, United in Sterling talks with your colleague Mike McGrath. As you reported or mentioned there, Ashworth keen to land deal without paying a transfer fee. Chelsea may still contribute to wages to get Sancho in return. Taking the deal separately, Jason, does one or the other make more sense? A lot of people seeing more rationale in Sterling for him moving to United and United getting Sterling than perhaps Sancho for either Sancho or Chelsea. Yeah, I can see why people are thinking that, because the first question is, where would Sancho play? You know, obviously Chelsea have got so many forward options, and we also know they're in for a centre forward. They're in talks with Brentford for Ivan Toney. They've obviously got this long-standing interest in Napoli's Victor Osimhen, which is not going to go away. And again, I think that is still possible to happen. And we know they've bought a lot of forward players already this window. So where does he fit into their plans? However, in saying all of that, he has been a player they've admired for quite a long time. They've considered making a move for him in the past. They have tracked his progress and so on at other clubs, so they would be interested in signing him. But I'm with you. I find it hard to see where he fits in. And at the same time, Raheem Sterling to Manchester United perhaps makes a little bit more sense. It's certainly a deal that he's interested in. I think his preference would be to stay in London. But if he has to move to Manchester, obviously he lived in the Northwest before. He lived in Manchester and Liverpool before. He knows the area. And I don't think he'd have any doubts about going back there. He maybe, as an experienced player, fits in with Manchester United's needs a little bit more. However, they've been working very hard this summer to bring the average age of that squad down. I think it's a deal that's more opportunistic than planned, but it might work out for both parties.
Indeed, as well. We'll maybe talk on the repercussions at Manchester United if Sterling were to move there, a big name with a big reputation. But on the subject of Chelsea, Craig, just looking at their lineup for the Wolves game recently where they won 6-2. Here's the headline in the Star. Top of the swaps. Talk start for Raheem and Jadon to trade places. But Madueke at the weekend, Mudryk playing, Cole Palmer playing, Neto off the bench, João Felix off the bench, and Nkunku off the bench, Dewsbury Hall. This isn't the place for Jadon Sancho to resurrect his career, or is it, Craig?
Absolutely not. Wouldn't they just be trading one problem for another? Jason called it there, it would be the biggest transfers of this transfer window, of any transfer window for the last 3 or 4 years. And I'll go along with that in terms of the shock value. It's a tremendous story, but shouldn't alarm bells be going off at both clubs? Manchester United would be taking a player Chelsea don't want, and Chelsea would be taking a player Manchester United don't want. So to that end, the Sterling deal as well, I think it would make more sense going to Manchester United in terms of you look at what they've got and there's more scope for addition in wide areas. I really don't think Marcus Rashford and Ahmad over the course of the season probably are the answer. So you can see Sterling going there, but doesn't Sterling to Manchester United just smack of the sort of transfer they were trying to leave behind? Isn't there an air of Alexis Sanchez to it in terms of a player? I know he's only 29 years old, but you would certainly say his best years are behind him. I think in his 2 seasons at Chelsea, he's only scored 14 goals, and I think he got about that amount in his last season at Manchester City. So he's a player who in the last 6 months, 2 managers have taken a look at in terms of Enzo Maresca and Gareth Southgate and have decided that he's not for them. So I would think from a Manchester United perspective, this isn't the sort of player they should be going all in on in terms of that wage and that potential financial outlay. And now, in terms of what goes in the opposite direction, Jadon Sancho, just for all the reasons you've just listed there, Teddy, they've made the call on Sterling to train with the 21s. When you saw them play at Wolves on the weekend then, the options they had and Madueke's influence, you thought, well, actually, they've probably made the right call. You can see the actual sense in it. And on Sancho himself, I covered Borussia Dortmund in the semi-final against Paris Saint-Germain last year, and he was better than I expected. He was good. He was very good. But is he the superstar we all thought he was going to be? Well, no, probably not. He then did close to nothing in the final again, both myself and Jason Murat. So yeah, while it would be quite an extraordinary transfer, I'm not sure it's a particularly good transfer for either side.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Sterling against Rashford for that wide left berth. I know both players can play in different positions, both with England hopes, of course, of getting back in the squad. We shall watch that situation over the next couple of days, gents. So let's just talk on the back page of the Eye about Ivan Toney and Chelsea. Craig, I'll come back to you on this one. Mark Douglas reporting Brazilian to-be's, the wonder kid Gustavo Nunes as Chelsea make move for Toney. Does Toney to Chelsea make sense, Craig?
It makes more sense than Jadon Sancho at Chelsea. Absolutely. They've still got scope for that central striker, that focal point for all the wingers we've just talking about to play off, to bounce off. And I would be really disappointed if Ivan Toney went to Al Ahly, went to Saudi Arabia. This is a player who, for the last, 18 months, we thought his next big move was going to be to an Arsenal, going to be to a Tottenham, to a Manchester United, wherever it is. I really hope he stays in the Premier League. Myself and Jason were with the England squad out in Germany there this summer, and we saw the impact Ivan Toney made when he came from the bench on a couple of occasions. And to lose him to the Saudi League would be a real shame. So I do hope he stays in the Premier League. And yeah, I think Chelsea would make a lot of sense geographically, not very far from the move. He probably wouldn't have to move, of course. You wouldn't have the unsettling impact there. And there is scope for him to go straight into that side. So, yeah, let's hope this one happens because it would benefit England as well, I think.
Yeah, Jason, what's your take on the Toney situation? A few days remaining in the window. Why hasn't he moved yet? And do you see him going in the next couple of days?
No, it's a very good question because Brentford have basically had to lower their asking price down to £50 million. Now, only £50 million, but it's a huge amount of money. But still, for a top-ranked striker, it's not a great deal. And at 28, okay, he's still got several years ahead of him. So you think that there'll be more interest in him. I think Brentford are relieved that Chelsea have come in for him because at the present time, the only sort of bid on the table was from Al Ahly, and that was still below the asking price, even though they've agreed personal terms with Ivan Toney. I think Toney, I agree with Craig, would be wrong to go to the Saudi Pro League, especially at the stage of his career he's at now. He should really be looking to sort of push on and try and remain in that England squad. But I think that from Brentford's point of view, it helps create a little bit more of a market. They're saying actually there are other clubs have come in today. I think there's a little bit of surprise that Toney had agreed personal terms with the Saudi club, and that maybe has moved things along quite quickly, as has the obviously looming transfer deadline. So I think Chelsea's main target at the moment remains Victor Osimhen. I think there've been quite positive talks with Napoli over that, but there still seems to be some discrepancy over the personal terms. Again, he's asking for an awful lot of money, and Chelsea keep reiterating the same point as with the Sancho deal, that they will not now break their wage structure, or don't want to break their wage structure. They want to bring that down, which is obviously part of the reason why they're pushing out Raheem Sterling. So I think I'm not quite sure where this one's heading. There certainly has been an inquiry from Chelsea, only that at the present time. I think they want to be made aware of developments, but obviously they've only got a couple more days, so they have to put a bid in quickly if they're going to do so.
OK, Chelsea focused on that central striker in the next couple of days, potentially. Manchester United people have said they need a backup to Rasmus Højlund, Craig, but back page of the Times, United agree a £50 million deal for central midfielder, defensive midfielder Ugari. Well, they mentioned here talks held with Chelsea over Sterling-Sancho swap. How important a player could Manuel Ugari be to Manchester United, Craig? How do you like this signing?
Well, certainly in the position he plays, you look at what they've got there now. They've lost Scott McTominay. Kobbie Mainoo was used there last season, but you wouldn't say he's probably got the defensive discipline for that role just yet, as wonderful a talent as he is. And then that leaves Casemiro as well. And on the evidence of what we've seen after that initial impact Casemiro had, and, I helped ghost Graham Souness's column for the Daily Mail, and Graham took a fair bit of stick when he called Casemiro a steady Eddie, and it's an opinion he stuck to. And over time, I've come round to Graham's way of thinking. I don't think Casemiro perhaps is the superstar we thought. I think they need better in there. There's obviously a reason they conceded so many shots on target last year. I think it was an average of 16 over the course of the Premier League season per game. So to bring in a player of Ugarte's apparent skill set. Now, I saw him play twice last year for Paris Saint-Germain against Newcastle in the Champions League, and he got hooked after an hour on both occasions. So I dare say Manchester United scouts weren't in the stands those nights because he wasn't very good. But no, certainly when you read around him and the reasons Manchester United are signing him, it does make sense. And the owners have shown great ambition. This, I think, now will take this summer spending towards £200 million. I think the problem they've got on the evidence of the first two games is they could do with spending another 200 million more.
Well, indeed, Jason. What's your take on the potential signing of Ugari and the repercussions there? Because we've mentioned, I think Craig mentioned Scott McTominay possibly going to Napoli, but surely it's a shootout between Casemiro and Ugari, isn't it, for the holding position? Do you think the veteran Brazilian will have to leave?
I think Manchester United would like him to leave. I think at the start of this window, there was great hope that he would be receiving an offer from the Saudi Pro League. There was talk of that. I was over in Saudi Arabia earlier this year, and he was definitely a player on the list in terms of one that they might be bringing in this summer, but that hasn't happened as yet. And obviously the clock is ticking on that. So he may have to stay at Manchester United, which will be, if they're being honest, would be a disappointment to them. I think they'd like to move him on. Ugarte, I think, will start ahead of him. I think it will be Ugarte in the midfield with Marinho. I think he'll play that classic number 6 role. It might suit him better at Manchester United without being too harsh on them. They're perhaps not such a possession-based team as Paris Saint-Germain. They want to keep the ball a bit more. Manchester United more of a counter-attacking side. He's not the greatest in possession, but he's good at breaking things up. I think with Casemiro, time has caught up with him a little bit. I think obviously he's played an awful lot of football, achieved an awful lot, but I think at the moment he's fine in the Premier League, and certainly last season he found it a bit too quick for him. He looks a bit leaner this season, but I still think that, they need an upgrade in terms of somebody who's a bit younger and a bit more mobile. And I certainly think that Ugarte will be a key part of that midfield going forward for Manchester United.
It feels like it could be a busy couple of days as it's coming up in the window. Jason and Craig, thank you very much for now. Take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including this in Jason's paper, The Telegraph. Tonali can see the light after Newcastle stood by him in darkest hour. Back in a few moments. Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and it's welcome back to The Telegraph's Jason Burt and Craig Hope from the Daily Mail. Craig, stay with you and come to the Metro, because a player you may remember from covering Newcastle 6-7 years ago, Mikel Arteta signing Mikel Merino. The Metro reporting Arteta has a strong feeling about Marinho after wrapping up the deal for the midfielder from Real Sociedad. Craig, how good a signing do you feel this is for Arsenal?
I do remember him telling, I remember being very disappointed when he left Newcastle. We only saw him for a season up here covering him, and he was very good. Not just that, I remember we sat down with him one day as well and had a long chat with him. If you remember back to the incident where the Dortmund bus was attacked by a terrorist, Mikel Merino was actually on that bus, and he spoke brilliantly to us, and he always carried himself well. He always had time for journalists, and seemed like a player who, when he arrived, I think it was an initial loan spell, and then he committed to the club on a long-term deal. And we thought, wow, they've really unearthed one here. He was only 21, 22, but after a year, he let it be known he wanted to go back to Spain. I think Newcastle were disappointed, and then you looked at it and you thought he was perhaps a player who was more suited to La Liga, going forward, and that's where he was going to see his career out. So I'm surprised to a degree that he's come back to the Premier League, but certainly not surprised in terms of the pedigree and the ability I saw during that year up here. And then again in the summer with Spain at the Euros when he came on and scored that telling goal. I think it was the quarterfinals, wasn't it? So yeah, a good signing for Arsenal, a good age, experience of the Premier League as well. So no, all good. It's a tick from me, even though I was rather cool on Sancho and Sterling earlier.
Indeed, brilliant cameo in the Euro final, much to England's chagrin. Jason, what's your take on it and the possible repercussions at Arsenal in that midfield? Is Partey under threat? Is Declan Rice under threat?
Yeah, it's a really interesting signing because it goes against the grain in what Arsenal have done in the last few years. He's an older player. He's 28. They've tended to go much younger in the last couple of years, and certainly it suggests that Mikel Arteta wants not just more competition in that midfield, but more physicalities. Marino, 6'2", he's very, very good in the air. He wins a lot of duels. I think he won the most duels in La Liga last season, and certainly it points to Arteta thinking that needs to sort of strengthen that area of the pitch. I think he'll probably play him on the left of that midfield three. So that's interesting in itself because he tried to play Kai Havertz there last season. This season, it's tended to be Declan Rice. I can't imagine Declan Rice is placed under threat, so maybe he's going to move Declan Rice further back, and Thomas Partey will probably be the one to miss out. But in saying all of that, Arsenal have got an awful lot of games to play this season, and he probably just needs more numbers as well. But it's a sign that Arsenal are going for things. They certainly aren't buying a player with resale value here. Arteta himself knows Moreno very, very well. They've obviously both played for Real Sociedad and actually also played with Martin Odegaard when Martin Odegaard was Real Sociedad. So there's a link there already with Arsenal and with the Arsenal players. And I think he'll probably be a very strong addition to that squad. As I say, it creates more competition in the midfield. But it's a very good point you make. I'm not quite sure who will miss out, but I would suggest it's probably Partey more under threat than Rice.
And Jason, quickly, does it feel like Arsenal are done now in the window? The elusive number 9 that people have clamoured for isn't going to arrive?
Well, there's rumours going around that they are still looking for another forward player, and I'm not quite sure who that is at the moment. But that is certainly something that I've heard today, that maybe they may have one more to do. If they can get something done, it might actually be something to make a big difference to them. But I certainly think they need a centre forward. Obviously, Kai Havertz has started the season very, very strongly, but it looks like an area where they're a little bit weak and then probably lacking in depth. And obviously, Eddie Nketiah moving on as well now, so they're going to bring some more money in. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do one more forward player. Either a player can play through the middle or one who can also play out wide before the window closes. Watch
this space then. As we say, should be a very exciting couple of days. Craig, let's talk Everton. All the optimism at Arsenal, not so at Everton after the first couple of games, but they've beaten Doncaster in the League Cup. The Mirror has Toffees finally cup and running. It is a League Two side, but how important a victory for Sean Dyche's side?
Well, it's huge when you consider the impact the defeat would have had. I think the actual victory itself probably isn't hugely significant. What is more significant is the fact that they didn't lose. We all saw the video from the weekend. They've lost the first game 3-0, the second game 4-0. What's going to be this weekend? 5-0. And you look at it and you think, can you read too much into early season games? I think not this year. There's players coming back with a hangover from the Euros, and business isn't ordinarily done now until closer to the end of the window. But I've watched Everton. I actually think you can read something into it. They don't look very good. They look as if they've got issues there on the pitch and off the pitch. And there's an argument to say that they're hamstrung by PSR and Sean Dyche is only working with what he's got. I still think they've got a set of players to be better than what they were down at Spurs on Saturday and better than what they were on the opening day of the season against Brighton. So yeah, a big win for them, even though it is only over League Two opposition. And I'll say that for the reason I've just touched on. Defeat wouldn't have been worth contemplating.
No, absolutely not. Tonali then, let's talk Newcastle. Stay with you, Craig, because that could be the showpiece game on Wednesday night in the League Cup. Arguably, Newcastle away at Nottingham Forest. Will Tonali play? Luke Edwards reporting in the Telegraph. Tonali can see the light after Newcastle stood by him in darkest hour. Club resolved to help their £58 million signing treat gambling addiction during lengthy ban and could now reap rewards. What can we realistically expect from Tonali after that long time out of the game, Craig?
Well, I've spent the past week, and this was a piece in the Daily Mail today, the inside story of Sandro Tonali's 10-month out, speaking to as many different people as possible to get a picture of what he's been doing and where he is currently at. And honestly, guys, there is super excitement around them going into this game tomorrow. The quote was given to me was, they haven't wasted the last 10 months. It's not a case of, right, okay, he's available now, let's see what he's got. They've identified areas for improvement. He's been receptive to that. He has trained more than he's ever trained when he's actually been available to play. He's come back and he seems to be in a really good place. We saw the evidence there on his debut against Aston Villa 12 months ago when he played like a gladiator. He was a superstar. He strutted around with a real alpha male quality to him. Now, he did come off it a little bit after that, and he wasn't as good as perhaps the original game, the debut, had suggested, but certainly within the confines of that match, we saw a potential superstar. And he's spoken today, Tonali. He said he feels like a new signing. Well, he's going to have to be like a new signing because Newcastle are struggling to get actual signings over the line. So, yeah, really excited to see him down in Forest tomorrow.
We've got about 30 seconds or so. Jason, give us your thoughts on Tonali's return. Does he owe Newcastle a debt of gratitude of sorts? Are you expecting a big impact? They've got this cup game and then they've got Tottenham at the weekend.
No, for sure he owes Newcastle, and Newcastle obviously stood by him as they should do, and he's reacted well to that. I think it's very good that he spent most of the last 10 months in Newcastle, and he's obviously taken a lot of English lessons, tried to integrate himself into the squad much more. So he should be better placed to have an impact. The only danger is obviously it puts more pressure on him. We saw with Ivan Toney when he came back, he started off very, very well, then struggled a little bit at Brentford. Maybe that was to do also with his future. But I think big things expected of Sandro Tonali. He was a big signing for Newcastle last year, and he's got a lot to prove.
OK, brilliant. Quickly, in a word, Jason, expecting the next busy couple of days?
Unfortunately, yes. I think it will be a very busy 3 days. I'm not quite sure where it's heading.
Fantastic stuff. We hope so as well. Follow it in your papers, of course, and Sky Sports News. Jason Burt from The Telegraph, Craig Hope from The Mail. Great to have you on Back Pages tonight, gentlemen. We'll see you again very soon.